In 1970s America, a wave of science fiction movies flooded audiences with a new wonder for the unknown and the future. From Star Wars to Star Trek, everyone was starry-eyed. Then, in 1979, Ridley Scott's Alien premiered with its vicious xenomorph, the emptiness of space where no one can hear you scream, and a female protagonist that looked nothing like the female protagonists theaters had ever seen before. Lieutenant Ellen Ripley woke up out of cryosleep to shock the world and our perceptions of gender for decades to come.
Get away from her, you bitch!
The first Alien movie follows Ellen Ripley as she finds herself and a crew of others trapped on a ship with a horrific alien beast that they must defeat in order to survive. Ripley becomes one of the first final girls to appear in a horror movie, and she was the first who truly survived on her own with no help from a man in the final battle. Alien set an example of a female leader who was intelligent, brave, strong, and mean enough to survive. She was a perfect example of a female-identifying person who was allowed to exist with masculine abilities and traits. The script wasn't even originally written with a gendered Ripley. It was supposedly only changed once Sigourney Weaver was casted. However, like in all human existence, the external perspectives of Ripley came flooding in. Ripley was soon to be recognized as a masculinized woman. One description of Ripley is the phallic woman. Her knowledge, her experience, and her training replace her physical lack, implying that Ripley accumulates powerful traits to make up for her lack of a penis, as if intelligence and a phallic body is a package deal. From an outside perspective, Ripley is incessantly compared to masculinity. However, Ripley is never one to bend to others' expectations. As the second installment of the franchise moved into theaters, Ripley's womanhood became a plot device. Aliens was rife with themes of motherhood, as Ripley encounters the Queen Xenomorph and her own motherly qualities when she rescues a young girl and forms a pseudo-nuclear family with one of the Marines on her mission. Yet, as she is created to adhere to female gender roles, she is still never made to become less than she was before. Ripley is still the savior of the day. She still overcomes the xenomorph and survives when many others are unable to. When Ripley is forced to shave her head and dress in men's prison clothes in order to blend in with the all-male prison inmates within the third installment, she still is not seen as any less or more than she is. On top of being stripped of her physical femininity, Ripley experiences staples of the female experience while still maintaining the traits of her personality. Now she is truly a stewing pot of mixed signals and stereotypes. A cis woman who no longer looks like a woman, but who has also become pregnant, who is also intelligent and strong. She is everything without compromise. Ellen Ripley is woman, she is brave, she is intelligent, and she is feminine. What Ripley taught the world from the very start in 1979 is that our traits do not make up our gender, but rather our personality. No matter how much the multiple directors and writers of the Alien series wanted to make Ripley feminine or masculine, no matter how the media interpreted her gender, her personality and her strength remained. In the 45 years since the release of the first Alien movie and our introduction to Ripley, society's moods around gender and presentation has remained a controversial topic. Today, in 2024, as the political climate continues to fluctuate, social media is on the rise, and our movies and TV shows continue to reflect our changing world. How are young adults experiencing gender? How are young adults presenting their personalities while fighting their own alien beasts in their social and societal circles? Have the gendered traits that caused Ripley to be seen as a phallic woman become just traits that a person could have regardless of gender?
Hello, my name is Cameron Counts. I am 27 years old and originally from South Carolina. I'm studying film and television at Columbia College Chicago with the hopes of being a writer and director. I am also a beat maker and a fine artist.
Hi, I'm Lila Kelly, and I am studying film and television here at Columbia College Chicago with a concentration in directing.
Hi, I'm Lucas Stahl. I'm an artist, filmmaker. I'm 19 years old, very queer influenced, which is definitely apparent in my artwork. And I like using different mediums, so filmmaking, painting, songs, music.
I'm Lionel Landers. I'm a Columbia student. Well, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been doing theater like all my life. I think I started when I was like 5 years old, maybe.
Hi, my name is Madden. I came from Northern Illinois, the suburban area. I'm going to college for environmental engineering at UIC. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be some sort of engineer, and might as well be an environmental engineer right now because the world's going downhill environmentally, so I feel like doing environmental engineering, I'll be able to, do my part some sort of way.
Everything in the world affects how we grow up and learn behaviors. Gender roles are created out of long-standing traditions and are upheld and enforced in many different areas. A survey of 56 people was taken asking them questions about the influence of media, such as movies and TV, wider society represented by the government and strangers, and intimate social situations such as family, friends, or people the subjects could clearly state a relation to. Subjects were asked to rank the influence each external force had on their development on a scale from 1 to 5. Rank 1 is no influence at all. 5 is very influenced. 76.8% of survey subjects replied at a rank of 4 or 5 that the media did affect their development. In another survey with 45 subjects, which focused on leadership styles in relation to media, 64.4% responded that an influential show or movie they listed did affect their development. Furthermore, in relation to a specific character of the subject's choosing, 60% said that their character affected their leadership style development.
I watched a lot of TV growing up. Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, The Sandlot, Harry Potter. The heroes were always boys, so I wanted to be one too. We liked the same things, playing outside, etc. So at times I thought I was one, but I always liked the girl characters like Hermione, and I liked girl things like playing with Bratz dolls too. So all of these things helped to shape me, but I also defined those things for myself.
I am so disconnected from like who's in the media, specifically women who are like on the internet or in movies or TV shows have such a different like definition of like woman and girlhood compared to like what it actually is, you know?
Wider society's effect on development was a bit more varied. 62.5% answered in the 4 to 5 range. 14.3% replied in the 1 to 2 range for influence from wider society. Overall, the most consistently influential force was intimate social situations between family and friends. 94.7% of people answered in the 4 to 5 range of influence from these situations. So, how did these different influences affect how young adults interact with gender roles? Survey subjects responded with an exact 50% split for whether the media upheld or deconstructed traditional gender roles. 82.1% responded that wider society upheld gender roles. And 51.8% responded that intimate social situations upheld gender roles, almost a 50% split as well. A similar data trend followed when subjects were asked if each of these influences taught the subject lessons about authenticity or conformity. 75% of subjects replied that the media taught them a lesson of authenticity and being true to oneself. 75% of subjects replied that wider society harbored lessons of conformity. And 67.9% replied that intimate social situations taught them lessons about authenticity.
I feel like many people, like especially people I don't know or I'm just getting to know, I feel like I'm supposed to not act as gentle and caring and as friendly as how women act. Because I feel like men have like portrayed more of a reserved and not really caring type of personality, and that has like reflected on a lot of people, like a lot of men. When I'm working with other classmates or just in the school environment, I feel like most of the time the men are just more reserved. So then I feel like I have to act a certain way to not draw too much attention towards me and not make people think that I'm weird or something.
When questioned about specific places and situations that responders felt pressured to act a certain way in order to conform, the most chosen option was peer pressure in school, followed by family culture and pressure from strangers.
There's more value in being masculine because being feminine is seen as something bad. if you're a girly girl, you're looked down upon. You're clearly not as intelligent, you're clearly not as funny, you're clearly not as cool. Because you're a girly girl. You go home and you paint your nails. You paint your nails and you put on your makeup and you do your hair. Like, it's not as honorable to be a girly girl as it is to be one of the boys' girls. Like, I remember my parents telling me when I was growing up that it's always easier to be friends with boys than it is with girls because there's so much drama with girls, whereas with boys they're just chill. They don't care. There's no drama with boys. So be friends with boys, don't be friends with girls. Like, it's encouraged. And there's some weird culture attached to being a girly girl. And I will say, not as much anymore. I don't think that this is necessarily true. Like, in 2024, I don't think that there's as much of a stigma behind this, but it obviously does still exist, but it was a lot worse when we were in middle school and elementary school growing up.
Recently, I've realized that I have a much harder time being friends with women than I do with men. And I don't know the root of it at the moment, but I've found that, like, it's affected a lot of how I view myself. Like, I view myself very feminine and very part of, like, womanhood and girlhood. But when I speak to others, like my partner even, they're like, oh, you're much more, like, androgynous. And I'm like, what? Are you sure? Like, are you positive? I don't feel like that. Are you sure? I really think that's, like, from where I dress a lot of the time. I mean, I really like dressing more feminine, but I look at my closet and I'm like, there's a whole lot more pants than dresses. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've gone to more, like, baggier clothing, which usually is, like, associated with, like, being androgynous. But I've never really felt like my clothing was androgynous. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm me, I'm a girl. This is what a girl would wear.
When I came out, I was a sophomore in high school. I came out as bisexual. People were joking about me being a lesbian enough to the point where other people in my close friend group just believed that. Like, that was just what they believed of me. And within that echo chamber, when I first came out, I also had people telling me that I was non-binary because I was wearing more masculine clothes, I was wearing a lot baggier clothes, and that honestly had less to do with my gender identity and everything to do with the body image issues I was having. But the fact that people kept insisting, like, oh, well, you're non-binary because you dress like a boy. You're non-binary. I was like, what? What do you mean? What? Like, you're telling, what? Since when? You should have told me sooner. Like, it was like, and that was so harmful as someone who already had these self-confidence issues, then trying to figure out who I am because I'm a sophomore in high school with this new, oh, I'm part of the queer community. Like, that piled on top of it, having everyone around me tell me who they thought that I was so harmful to my development as a person. And like, I really struggled with that for several years until I finally, my senior year was kind of when I started to get a grasp on it and started to, like, if someone made a joke about me being a lesbian, I would say, no, I'm not, nope. Like, I don't know where you got that from except your own head, but, like, don't make that my problem. That's not my problem. What you think of me does not define who I am. And I think that some people struggle with labels. Some people don't think that they're comfortable. Some people need them to feel comfortable. Other people should not be telling anybody what their label is.
I think it is important to remember that we define ourselves, but it is also important to acknowledge that the context of our environment will define us to others. At the time when I exclusively used one set of pronouns, he, they, and was misgendered, it was very important for me to remind myself that this person doesn't exist in the same world I do. Their view of me doesn't change my view of myself. I can't expect everyone to see what I see. I can only ask that they respect me. And if they do not, that is another issue. And have I been disrespected? Yes, countless times. Has my view of myself been negatively impacted by another's view of myself? Yes, but I just try to remind myself of these things to be able to move forward. I guess I just chose to see myself through my own lens instead of society's. Once I did that, I saw myself a lot clearer and found my own personal blend. External forces have always pushed young people one way or another, or into a box. Pushing your way out and finding yourself, and by extension your authenticity, takes intention and strength.
Everything can coexist at one time because we're all people and we all are complex in our in all of the things that we are.
Authenticity to me means representing yourself as honestly as you can in all situations where it is safe to. It means answering the question, "How are you?" as truthfully as you can, even if your answer of "not so great" makes the other person uncomfortable. Being authentic is being true to yourself, thoughts and emotions, and unwavering even if you feel the need to be something else to preserve another's comfort. It is not always easy to be authentic, especially when you've been taught that putting yourself first is selfish, but it isn't always selfish to put yourself first.
As young adults grow into their authenticity and confidence, it turns into a motivation for how they change the world around them. In a survey with 45 subjects, 46.7% responded that they were a leader, and 46.7% responded that they would lead if asked to. 44.4% of subjects then responded that their gender does affect their leadership. 40% said it does not.
Being a leader to me is, you're kind of, when you're a leader, you're like up a step. You're not on like a pedestal or anything, but you're up a step on like a staircase. And all you're trying to do is grab as many people's hands as you can and come up the stairs with them until you finish your goal, which is at the top of the stairs. I definitely think I have my leadership from him because he's very focused on like leadership means that you have to take a step back and you have to do the hardest thing, which is say, I'm done. And allow other people to talk, because he does this style where when he's directing a scene, he doesn't give any notes in the beginning and he just sees what happens, and then he'll say, do it this way, and then do it this way, and then do it your way, do it this way. And it allows a lot of collaboration between actors and filmmakers for them to be like, ooh, what about this? And he's like, all right, cool. And it kind of makes it more of a symbiotic relationship instead of a parasitic of like, I'm using you to get my goal. It's like, let's work together. He has a lot of moments of like hyper masculinity with his films, where it's very, you can tell that there's that like machismo energy to it, especially with the film Antichrist and the House of Jack Bill, you can tell. But then he has a lot of moments that are very feminine and very, and especially you can tell just by the tone that his film has, it's very, I think of feminine as more soft and masculine is more rigid, and masculine is not gonna bend and break, but feminine knows that like to survive, you kind of gotta be a little movement, you gotta have a little bit of wiggle room. And he used a softer directing tone, and because of it, it has more of a gentle, less scary, masculine approach, and I think that's why you have better performance. And I think he's spoken about in an interview how he's like, I definitely feel more feminine sometimes. Which hearing that from a director who I look up to is what I needed to hear, because I often integrate more feminine traits, which sometimes the men in my life told me that was weak to do and you shouldn't do that, but I've kind of come to terms and I enjoy it a lot more now. I did a short film this weekend, which is very inspired by him, and my leadership was too. The leadership of not being constricting and being like, allow some freedom and something new to rise. It's like, your job as a leader is to, again, get to that goal, but you don't know exactly what that goal looks like until you're there. So allow other people to chime in, and I made sure that everyone felt like safe enough to say something and do something different and allow it to be free. And I feel I'm a mix between feminine and masculine. I think the best parts of masculine are that like that rigidness and that like we're going to get there. with this idea. But the feminine urges that I have, and the femininity that I'm in touch with, to change and to allow it to fall, let the puzzle pieces fall into a way that isn't confining to a box. Allow it to become something new and inviting and not cold and bitter, and allow it to be warm and a little softer, if that makes sense.
Subjects of the surveys were asked to list their top 3 most important traits for a leader to have. The most picked answers were empathy, responsibility, and communicability. Later on, they were asked if the traits they chose were more feminine or masculine. The majority ranked their traits right in the middle, implying that the traits are viewed as non-gendered.
A leader should be reliable and understanding and encouraging to people, brave and courageous to be able to put down what they think and have people follow them. I feel like when I was a kid, I felt those roles were more projected onto men, but now I feel like it's both men and women. The world changed a lot, and I also feel like my sense of self and everyone else has changed, and I'm able to see the different type of leaders there are in this world.
I think to an extent, social media like Instagram and Snapchat, it was around when we were in middle school, and it still serves pretty much the same function that it always has. But once TikTok came around, I think that a lot more people were able to find a very niche group of people who embraced their femininity and said, I've always felt weird for wanting to be more feminine because everyone looks down upon it, but maybe I am like other girls, and that's okay. And I think that because more people who had that same feeling were able to find other people and realize they weren't alone in that, then this movement occurred where we're embracing our femininity. We're using it as a positive instead of a negative. And I think a lot of that also came from COVID. We were all inside. People were able to experiment more. They were more willing to experiment because they weren't going anywhere. So I'll sit in my house and do bright pink makeup and maybe make a TikTok about it because I don't have to go anywhere and see anyone that I know who would make me feel insecure in doing those more feminine things. And so I think that that's kind of what it was for me, was that I had to fully destigmatize myself and teach myself that it's okay to be like other girls. That's the whole point. Everyone's like everyone. We're people, and that's fine. You can like the same things that other people like, and it doesn't matter. And I think that came from finding a community of people on TikTok that held that same belief. And I think that has helped me as well to be okay, well, if they can do that, then literally what's stopping me?
I think people of all types are finally realizing how cool people can be and are no longer limiting themselves based upon traditional expectations. Thus, they are allowing themselves to explore areas they previously didn't, such as feminine or masculine clothing, hobbies, music, you name it. People of the Gen Z and younger generations are definitely a lot more accepting of queerness and weirdness. I've seen and experienced the interactions of walking into a room and immediately being asked my pronouns. The change is very clear, and I am happy to see it.
I think that we're in an age where it's more accepting to be non-binary because there's inherent this exploration to it, exploring yourself, which is the ultimate goal that everyone's trying to do. Anyone who believes in a religion are doing the same inherently. They're exploring themselves and their beliefs. And yes, it's through a religious lens, and some people do it through gender lens, some people do it through sexuality lens, spirituality lens, a creative lens. But it's that exploration of self that all humans do, and which makes us all the same. And I don't know why we act like it doesn't, but we're all the same because we're all just searching for what we don't know.
You could be literally anyone and express yourself in literally any way. It does not mean that you're queer. It does not have to mean that you're anything. It's not fair of anyone ever to say that you are something just because of the way you present yourself.
A person who identifies as a woman but presents masculine traits is a woman. They are only non-binary if they say they are non-binary. This goes back to masculinity and femininity being what we make it. What is boyish or girly to one person may not be to another. Who are we to tell someone who they are? Let them tell us for themselves.
We have always known that traits do not actually belong to gender. Even when Ellen Ripley was being forged in the minds of writers, directors, and Sigourney Weaver herself, they innately knew who she was, and they knew what her gender did to her character and what it had no effect on at all. We try to place labels and containers to things that simply come with existing as a human being. Illustrated by a quote from Alien Woman, "The game, they have to realize, is no longer man versus woman. The only game is power. And power does not recognize sex except as a rhetorical tool of convenience." Describing traits to gender was never about a biological narrative. It was about taking power away from certain groups of people. To get that back, all we have to do is realize that there is nothing stopping us from achieving that power that has been taken away, and we are taking it back, year by year, voice by voice. Young adults are discovering that their true abilities, their true expressions, do not fit within the confines of a gendered system. Young adults are discovering that the most powerful way to exist is to know their own identity and present to the world however they want to, regardless of external expectations and ideas.